The massive council chamber floated in the darkness of space, gleaming structure of metal and crystal that had witnessed 200 years of galactic cooperation. Inside the grand hall, representatives from 11 different species sat in their designated sections. Their forms as varied as the stars themselves. The crystalline Vex shimmered with internal light. The aquatic Morith rested in their fluid-filled observation tanks. The insectoid krill clicked and chirped in their musical language, translated instantly by the chamber's sophisticated systems. Ambassador Day stood in the human section. His dark suit, a stark contrast to the elaborate garments and natural displays of the other species. He had served Earth's interests in this chamber for 15 years, and in all that time he had never seen such tension in the air. The emergency session had been called with only 3 days' notice, and the agenda contained a single item that made his stomach tight with worry. The vote began without ceremony. One by one, each species cast their decision on Resolution 8847. The Vex voted yes. The Morith voted yes. The Krill voted yes. Down the line it went, each species agreeing to strip humanity of its voting rights and reduce Earth to a probationary member of the Galactic Unity Council. The official reason was listed as concern over humanity's aggressive tendencies and unpredictable nature in diplomatic situations. Day listened to each vote with his face carefully neutral. He thought about the human rescue teams currently stationed in 17 different sectors. He thought about the human peacekeepers mediating border disputes. He thought about the human engineers maintaining the quantum communication relays that allowed this very vote to happen in real time across light years of space. None of that seemed to matter now. When the final vote was cast, the result was unanimous. Humanity was being demoted. Counselor Nex of the Vex species delivered the official statement. His crystalline body pulsed with what might have been satisfaction or simply the reflection of the chamber's lights. It was always hard to tell with the Vex. He explained that humanity would retain access to council trade networks and could still participate in discussions, but their voice would no longer carry weight in actual decisions. It was for the good of the council, he said. For stability and peace. Day waited for the appropriate moment, then requested permission to speak. The council granted it with the casual generosity of those who believed they had already won. He walked to the central platform, his footsteps echoing in the vast chamber. He looked at each section of representatives, meeting their eyes or equivalents with calm dignity. Then he began to speak. I want to thank the Council for 2 centuries of cooperation, they said, his voice carrying clearly through the translation systems. Humanity has learned much from our time among you. We have grown as a species. We have contributed what we could to the collective prosperity and safety of Council space. He paused, letting the words settle. Several council members shifted in their seats. They had expected anger or pleading. This sounded like neither. However, Day continued, "We recognize that the council has made its decision. We respect that decision, as we have always respected the democratic processes of this body. Therefore, in accordance with Article 73 of the Unity Charter, which guarantees the right of voluntary withdrawal to any member species, I hereby announce that humanity will be ending its association with the Galactic Unity Council." The chamber erupted in surprised chatter. Counselor Nex's crystalline form flashed rapidly, a sign of confusion among the Vex. A Morith representative surged forward in his tank, creating waves that splashed against the transparent walls. Day raised his hand, and slowly the noise died down. "We will honor all existing contracts and obligations for a period of 30 standard days. After that time, all human personnel will be withdrawn from council space, and all human resources will be redirected to independent human systems. We wish you all prosperity and peace." He bowed slightly, a gesture of respect he had learned meant something to most council species, then turned and walked back to the human section. He gathered his documents, his hands steady despite the adrenaline coursing through his veins. Behind him, the council was already moving on to the next agenda item. A few representatives glanced his way, but most had already dismissed the matter, light years away. In the frontier zone, where the edges of council space met the unknown darkness beyond, Captain Hannah stood on the bridge of the human rescue frigate Endurance. The ship was battered and scorched from recent action. Her crew had just spent 72 hours straight evacuating a Vex mining colony that had suffered a catastrophic radiation leak. 300 Vex civilians were now safely aboard Council medical ships, alive because her crew had ignored the danger and gone in anyway. The communications officer turned to her, his young face pale. "Captain, you need to hear this." He played the broadcast from the council chamber. Hannah listened to the vote, to Ambassador Day's response, to the sound of humanity walking away from 200 years of galactic partnership. Her chief engineer, Jin, stood beside her. He was 50 years old, had served on council station maintenance crews for 25 of those years, and his hands were still dirty from repairing the Vex colony's reactor core. "They actually did it," Jin said quietly. "They voted us out. We're leaving," Hannah replied. She looked at the Vex colony in the distance, at the council ships receiving the refugees, at the vast darkness of space beyond. "Send a message to Earth Command. Request our withdrawal orders and timeline." Okay. The message came back within the hour. All human ships were to begin returning to Solar Alliance space immediately. All human personnel were to evacuate council stations and colonies within 30 days. All contracts were to be completed or transferred within the same time frame. It was organized, professional, and absolutely final. Hannah watched as Ambassador Day's shuttle appeared on long-range sensors, departing from the council station and heading toward the nearest jump gate that would take him back to Earth. In the council chamber behind him, the session continued. They were already debating trade agreements, already discussing patrol schedules, already planning a future that apparently didn't require humanity's presence. They would learn differently soon enough. But for now, Hannah had her orders. She turned to her crew, seeing the mixture of anger, hurt, and determination on their faces. "Set course for home," she said. "Let's see how they manage without us." The next 30 days moved with the precision of a military operation, because that was exactly what it was. Across 17 sectors of council space, human personnel began the systematic process of withdrawal. There were no protests, no angry speeches, no dramatic gestures. Humanity simply began to leave, following every protocol and regulation exactly as written. Commander. Tay stood in the operations center of defense, Station Kappa 7. One of the massive orbital platforms that guarded the approaches to the core sectors. The station was home to 4,000 council military personnel, and until this morning, 2,400 of them had been human. Now those humans were packing their personal belongings and boarding the transport ships that arrived every 6 hours like clockwork. A Krill military commander approached Tay, her multifaceted eyes reflecting the lights of the command displays. Her translator device rendered her clicking speech into standard council language. "Commander, you cannot simply leave. Humans comprise 60% of our tactical officers, 70% of our rapid response teams. Who will maintain operational readiness?" Tay looked at the deployment charts on the main screen. Every green indicator showing a human position was slowly turning amber as personnel transferred out. "That is for the council to decide. My orders are clear. All human military personnel are to withdraw within the 30-day period specified by Ambassador Day. But the border zones, the Krill commander insisted. The patrol schedules, the threat assessment protocols. Your people designed all of these systems, and I suggest you study them carefully," Tay said, not unkindly. "The documentation is comprehensive. Any competent officer should be able to maintain operations." He didn't mention that those protocols had been designed by humans specifically because other species. Military structures had proven inflexible when dealing with unexpected situations. That would be impolite. Humanity was leaving on good terms. The Krill commander watched as another group of human officers filed past, carrying their duffel bags toward the docking bay. "This is a mistake," she said quietly. Tay nodded. "Yes, but not ours." In the medical research complex on Station Centris, Dr. Yuna was having a similar conversation. She had spent 15 years in this laboratory, working with scientists from 6 different species to combat the diseases and biological incompatibilities that arose when multiple alien species tried to share the same space. Her specialty was predicting how diseases mutated when jumping between species, a skill that had saved millions of lives during the Great Plague 6 years ago. Her research partner, a Morith named Kellis, floated in his mobility tank beside her desk. "You cannot take your research," he said, his translated voice carrying notes of desperation. 15 years of work? The prediction algorithms. The cross-species vaccine protocols. Una continued transferring files to the Council's main database. "I'm transferring everything that belongs to the Council. The joint research, the shared databases, the collaborative projects. All of it will remain accessible to you and the team in your personal research." Una's hands paused on the keyboard. "That belongs to humanity. The Council has made it clear that we are no longer full partners. Therefore, our proprietary research remains our property." She resumed typing. Her personal research included 20 years of insights into how human immune systems worked, information that had proven crucial in developing treatments for other species. But she had been very careful over the years to keep her human-specific research separate from the joint projects. "We need you," Kellis said simply. "You needed us. You needed us." Una corrected gently. Past tense. The Council voted otherwise. "I'm sorry, Kellis. I truly am. You're a brilliant scientist, and I've treasured our collaboration. But I have my orders." She finished the transfer, gathered her personal items, and walked out of the laboratory she had called home for 15 years. She didn't look back. If she looked back, she might not be able to leave. Across Council space, the same scene played out in 1,000 different locations. Engineer Juan spent his final week deactivating the quantum relay network that humans had installed over 50 years. The relays cut communication lag across Council space by 90%, turning conversations that would take hours into real-time exchanges. They were also human proprietary technology. It's built on principles that humanity had developed independently. A Vex administrator watched as Juan shut down relay station after relay station. "You must leave them operational. The Council requires these communications." Juan checked his handheld device, confirming the shutdown sequence. "The relays are human technology, licensed to the Council under specific terms. Those terms included the presence of human maintenance personnel. Without us, the relays will begin to fail in approximately 6 months. You're welcome to attempt maintenance yourselves, but the technical specifications are complex. Then leave the specifications. They're proprietary," one said. "We offered to sell the technology to the Council 3 times over the years. The Council declined, preferring to maintain the licensing agreement. That agreement is now void." The Vex administrator's crystalline form pulsed with what might have been anger. "This is sabotage." "No," Juan said calmly. "This is business. We built these relays. We maintained them. We kept them running. Now we're leaving, and we're taking our technology with us. You're welcome to develop your own quantum communication system." The administrator started to respond, then stopped. They both knew that the Vex had tried to replicate human quantum technology for decades and had never succeeded. Something about human intuitive problem-solving produced solutions that other species couldn't. Reverse engineer. The Council released an official statement halfway through the 30-day withdrawal period. It was broadcast on all channels, translated into every Council language, and delivered with the kind of confidence that came from having 11 species backing the same message. "The Unity Council remains strong," the statement read. "Humanity's departure will have minimal impact on our collective prosperity. The Council has endured for 3,000 years and will continue to thrive." Captain Hannah read the statement on her ship's communication terminal and allowed herself a small, bitter smile. The Endurance was currently the last human vessel still operating in the frontier zone. Her crew had just finished transferring their patrol duties to a mixed squadron of Krill and Moroth ships. The handover had been professional, but Hannah had seen the uncertainty in the other captain's eyes. They were good officers, but they had relied on human tactical support for so long that they had forgotten how to operate independently. She walked through her ship one final time before departure, checking each section. The engineering bay, where Jin and his team had performed miracles on a daily basis. The medical bay, where her doctor had treated injuries from a dozen different species. the bridge where her crew had coordinated rescue operations that saved thousands of lives. Every space held memories of challenges overcome and disasters averted. "Course plotted, Captain," her navigator reported. "Jump gate is ready when you are." Hannah settled into her command chair and looked at the view screen. Behind them, the frontier zone stretched into darkness. The beacons that marked safe passage through this dangerous region were already beginning to dim as their human maintenance routines ended. In 6 months, this whole area would be effectively unnavigable without significant updates to the beacon network. "Take us home," Hannah said. The Endurance jumped, and the last human presence left the frontier zone. Behind them, the Council continued their business, confident in their strength and their future. They would learn the truth soon enough. But for now, humanity was going home, and the galaxy would have to learn to stand on its own. 3 months after humanity's departure, the first major crisis struck. It began as a minor disagreement over mining rights in the Tertius sector, where Vex and Morath territories met at a resource-rich asteroid field. Both species claimed historical rights to the region. Both had documentation supporting their claims. Both refused to compromise. In the past, human peacekeepers would have arrived within hours of the first complaint. They would have reviewed the claims, interviewed witnesses, and proposed a solution that satisfied both parties well enough to prevent violence. It was what humans did, what they had always done. They found ways to make angry parties talk instead of fight. But there were no human peacekeepers anymore. The Council had its own diplomatic corps, trained professionals from multiple species who understood conflict resolution in theory. They arrived at the disputed sector 5 days after the first complaint was filed. By then, both sides had already deployed military assets to defend their claims. The Vex sent crystal ships that shimmered with barely contained energy. The Morath deployed their fluid dynamic vessels, sleek and fast. The diplomats tried to arrange meetings, but neither side would back down without appearing weak. The negotiations dragged on for weeks, while the military presence grew. Small skirmishes broke out. A Vex mining station was damaged. A Morath supply ship was disabled. What had started as a minor border dispute was rapidly becoming a war, and the Council's diplomatic corps seemed powerless to stop it. They followed all the proper protocols, filed all the correct reports, and maintained professional courtesy at all times. But they lacked something that human peacekeepers had possessed in abundance: the willingness to take risks and make hard calls. Humans would have put themselves between the two sides and refused to move until both parties agreed to talk. Other species found such behavior irrational and dangerous. Humans called it necessary. 6 weeks after the dispute began, the first casualties were reported. 3 Vex and 4 Morath killed in a firefight over an asteroid. The Council emergency session debated the appropriate response for 2 days. By the time they decided on economic sanctions against both parties, 12 more beings had died. While the Council struggled with the Vex-Morath conflict, a different kind of crisis emerged in the core sectors. A quantum virus appeared in the financial networks, corrupting transaction data and spreading through the interconnected banking systems. It was sophisticated, adaptive, and entirely artificial. Someone had created it deliberately, though no one knew who or why. Counselor Nex of the Vex frantically searched through the Council's personnel databases, looking for the human cybersecurity experts who had always handled such threats. He found their records, their contact information, their last known assignments. All of them were now back in Solar Alliance space, working for human systems that had no connection to the Council. He tried to contact them anyway, sending official requests for emergency assistance. The responses came back within hours, polite but firm. Humanity was no longer part of the Council. They had no obligation to provide emergency services. They wished the Council well in resolving the crisis. The Krill had cybersecurity specialists. So did the Vex themselves. They assembled a team and began working on the problem, following all the established protocols for virus containment and eradication. It should have worked. The protocols had been developed over decades and had proven effective against every previous cyber threat. But this virus was different. It adapted faster than the team could respond. It found vulnerabilities that shouldn't have existed. It spread through systems that were supposed to be isolated. For 3 days, the financial networks of the core sectors descended into chaos as the virus corrupted data faster than the teams could restore it. A Krill technician finally discovered a partial solution, a patch that slowed the virus enough for systematic eradication. But by then, 30 trillion credits had vanished into corrupted databases. Market confidence collapsed. 3 major trading systems suspended operations indefinitely. The economic damage would take years to repair. In the aftermath, Counselor Nex reviewed the human cybersecurity protocols and realized what had gone wrong. The humans hadn't just followed established procedures. They had intuited how attackers would think, predicted adaptive responses, and created defenses that anticipated problems before they occurred. It was creative problem-solving that worked because humans were used to facing threats that didn't follow predictable patterns. Other species excelled at systematic responses. Humans excelled at chaos. The third crisis began on Morath Prime, the homeworld of the aquatic species. A disease outbreak, initially dismissed as a minor health concern, rapidly evolved into something deadlier. Medical authorities recognized it as a mutation of Kellis syndrome, a disease that Dr. Yuna and her team had nearly eradicated 15 years ago. The Morath medical establishment responded immediately, following the treatment protocols that Dr. Yuna had developed. But the disease had mutated, and the standard treatments proved only partially effective. The death toll climbed from hundreds to thousands to tens of thousands. Kellis,
Actor.
Yuna's former research partner, worked frantically in his laboratory. He had all of Dr. Yuna's published research, all the collaborative data they had generated together. But she had taken her personal research with her, the insights and intuitive leaps that had made her predictions so accurate. Without those insights, Kellis was limited to systematic trial and error, testing variations of the treatment protocols and hoping for success. It took 6 weeks to develop an effective treatment for the mutated disease. By then, over 100,000 Morath had died. Dr. Yuna would have predicted the mutation pattern within days. She would have had a treatment ready within 2 weeks. But Dr. Yuna was gone, and the cost of her absence was measured in mass graves. As these crises unfolded, another problem emerged slowly and almost imperceptibly. The quantum communication relays began to fail, exactly as Engineer Juan had predicted. Messages that used to take minutes now took hours. Emergency transmissions from the frontier zone arrived too late for any meaningful response. The careful coordination that had kept Council space safe and prosperous began to break down. Ships got lost in transit. Supply deliveries missed their schedules. Military units lost contact with their command structures. The Council tried to compensate by reverting to older communication methods. But the entire infrastructure had been built around the quantum relay network. Everything was now slower, more expensive, and less reliable. In Earth's diplomatic headquarters, former Ambassador Day received an encrypted message from a contact still within the Council. The message contained no greeting, no explanation, just a comprehensive data package. Casualty reports from the Vex-Morth conflict. Economic projections showing decades of recovery time. Death tolls from the plague on Morath Prime. Communication failure rates. Infrastructure collapse predictions. At the bottom of the data package was a single line of text. "They're finally noticing what you did here." Day reviewed the data carefully, his expression neutral. He had known this would happen. They all had. 200 years of humans solving problems, preventing disasters, keeping the machinery of the Council running smoothly had made. Everyone forget that these things didn't happen automatically. Peace required work. Safety required vigilance. Prosperity required constant effort. The Council had voted humanity out because they saw humans as aggressive and unpredictable. They weren't entirely wrong. Humans were aggressive in pursuing solutions. They were unpredictable because they didn't follow conventional wisdom when conventional wisdom proved insufficient. But those traits had made them essential. Now the Council was learning that lesson the hard way. Day saved the data, packaged and prepared a report for the Solar Alliance leadership. The Council would reach out eventually. The only question was how much damage they would suffer before they admitted they needed help. Day hoped it wouldn't take too long. Despite everything, he didn't want to see the galaxy burn. Humanity had always been better at saving things than destroying them. 6 months after humanity's withdrawal, the Galactic Unity Council called an emergency summit. This was not a routine session or a scheduled meeting. This was a mandatory gathering of every council representative, every sector administrator, and every department head from all 11 member species. Attendance was required, not requested. The council chamber, which usually operated in calm, measured tones, hummed with anxiety. Counselor Nex stood at the central platform, his crystalline form flickering with colors that indicated deep distress among the Vex. He had spent the last week compiling reports, analyzing data, and preparing the presentation that would force the council to confront an uncomfortable truth. Around him, representatives from the other species waited in various states of concern, curiosity, or denial. The presentation began with simple numbers. Charts and graphs appeared on the massive display screens that ringed the chamber. Counselor Nex's voice, usually smooth and confident, carried an edge of barely controlled frustration as he walked through the data. Conflict resolution rates before human withdrawal: 94% of disputes resolved without military action. Current rate: 43%. Border conflicts have increased by 280%. Casualties from military engagements have increased by 2,800%. He paused, letting the numbers sink in. In 6 months, more council citizens have died in conflicts than in the previous 20 years combined. The next set of charts showed infrastructure data. Human engineers maintain 78% of critical infrastructure across council space. Communication relay functionality has declined by 60%. Navigation beacon reliability has dropped to 32%. Emergency response times in the frontier zone have increased from hours to days or weeks. 3 colonies in the outer sectors have been abandoned because emergency support is no longer available. Medical data came next, and Counselor Nex's voice softened slightly. Even for the crystalline Vex, death was tragic. Human medical teams handled 89% of cross-species. Pandemic responses: Dr. Yuna's team alone was responsible for predicting and preventing 12 major disease outbreaks in the last decade. In 6 months without human medical support, we have experienced 4 outbreaks. The Morith Plague claimed 103,000 lives, a disease that Dr. Yuna would have predicted and prevented within weeks. The military data was perhaps the most sobering. A Krill commander, the same one who had argued with Commander Tay 6 months ago, stood to deliver her portion of the report. Her translated voice carried none of its usual confidence. Human tactical doctrine formed the basis of every successful council military operation in the past century. We reviewed the records. Every major victory, every successful defense, every strategic achievement can be traced back to human tactical thinking or human operational planning. She activated a new display showing 3 star systems marked in red. Since human withdrawal, we have lost 3 colony worlds to raider attacks. These were not sophisticated military operations. They were opportunistic strikes by small criminal organizations. In the past, human patrol ships would have deterred these attacks simply by existing in the sector. Human crews had a reputation. Raiders knew that humans didn't retreat, didn't negotiate, and didn't stop pursuing until the job was done. A Morith counselor surged forward in his tank. But surely we can adapt. Surely our own forces can learn these tactics. The Krill commander's multifaceted eyes reflected the chamber lights as she turned to face him. We have been trying. Our officers study human tactical manuals every day. They memorize the procedures, practice the drills, and follow the protocols exactly. But something is missing. Humans didn't just follow their own doctrine. They adapted it in real time based on circumstances. They made decisions that seemed irrational, but proved effective. They took risks that our training explicitly tells us to avoid. Counselor Nex returned to the platform and displayed the economic data. It was devastating. Council operating costs have increased by 340%. This is not due to expansion or growth. This is the cost of attempting to replace human services with other species. We require for Vex engineers to do the work one human engineer accomplished. We need 6 diplomatic teams to achieve what one human peacekeeper handled alone. Our medical response teams are 3 times larger and half as effective. He let the silence stretch, then delivered the conclusion that everyone in the chamber had been avoiding. We assumed humans were lucky, that any competent species could do what they did. We were wrong. We didn't just lose a member species. We lost the species that held our entire civilization together. A younger Vex counselor, one who had voted enthusiastically for humanity's demotion, spoke up. But why? What makes them so different? They're not smarter than us. Their technology isn't superior to ours. Their physical capabilities are average at best. What did we miss? Counselor Nex's form pulsed slowly, a sign of reluctant acceptance among the Vex. We missed context. Humans evolved on Earth, a planet that tried to kill them every single day of their evolutionary history. Predators, diseases, natural disasters, climate extremes. Their world was hostile in ways our worlds never were. They had to develop traits that we never needed. He pulled up new data, this time showing human psychological and behavioral patterns. Persistence. When other species recognize a problem is impossible, humans keep trying anyway. Adaptability. When their plans fail, immediately create new ones instead of following procedure. Creativity under pressure. Humans solve problems by thinking in ways that no one else considers. And most importantly, an irrational refusal to accept defeat. The Krill commander added her observations. I watched human crews work during my time on the defense stations. They didn't stop for rest breaks when lives were at stake. They didn't abandon missions because the risks were too high. They didn't follow safety protocols when those protocols meant people would die. They were willing to sacrifice themselves for others, including for species that weren't their own. We called them reckless. We called them dangerous, but they were effective. A Morith counselor asked the question they were all thinking. What do we call them now? The chamber fell silent. Then a voice from the back spoke up. It was an old Krill warrior, retired from active service but present as an advisory observer. Deathworlders, she said simply. That's what they call themselves sometimes? We thought it was a joke or a boast. But it's the truth. They came from a world that tried to kill them, and they survived by becoming tougher than their world. They brought those survival traits to us, and we thought we could replicate them. We can't. Those traits are earned through millions of years of evolution, not learned from a manual. Counselor Nex nodded slowly. Which brings us to the purpose of this summit. He straightened, his crystalline form catching the light. I propose that we formally invite humanity to return to full council. Membership with complete voting rights and a permanent seat on the High Council. Not as a favor to them, but because we desperately need them. Our civilization is collapsing without them, and our pride is not worth the lives being lost. The vote was immediate and unanimous. Every species, including those who had most strongly supported humanity's demotion, voted yes. The irony was not lost on anyone in the chamber. 6 months ago, they had unanimously voted humans out. Now they were unanimously begging them to come back, but voting was the easy part. Now they had to convince humanity to actually return. And given how the council had treated them, that might prove to be the hardest challenge yet. Counselor Nex looked at his fellow council members. Prepare a delegation. Include representatives from every species, and choose carefully. We need humans who understand negotiation and compromise, because humanity has both. Let's hope they're willing to talk to us, because if they're not, we're all in serious trouble. The council chamber slowly emptied as representatives returned to their sectors to prepare. For the first time in 3,000 years of unity, the Galactic Council had been forced to admit that they were not self-sufficient. They needed humanity. They just hoped humanity still needed them. The council delegation arrived at Solar Alliance Station 3 exactly 2 weeks after their emergency summit. The station was humanity's primary diplomatic facility, a sprawling complex that orbited Earth's moon. It was smaller than the council's grand chamber, more practical than impressive, and it operated with the kind of efficient simplicity that characterized human engineering. The delegation noticed immediately that every system worked perfectly, every schedule ran on time, and every person they encountered seemed to know exactly what they were doing. Ambassador Day, now promoted to Solar Alliance Secretary for External Affairs, met them in a conference room with windows overlooking Earth. He had aged slightly in the 6 months since leaving the council. A few more gray hairs at his temples, but his expression was as calm and diplomatic as ever. He offered refreshments appropriate for each species and waited patiently while they settled into their seats. Counselor Nex spoke first, his crystalline form deliberately dimmed to show humility. Secretary Day, thank you for agreeing to meet with us. We know that we have no right to ask for your time after what the council did. You have every right, Day said quietly. The council and humanity maintained relations for 200 years. That history deserves respect, even when current circumstances are difficult. The Morith counselor leaned forward in his fluid tank. Then you know why we're here. The council needs humanity to return. We were wrong to demote you. We were wrong to underestimate your contributions. We are prepared to offer full restoration of membership, complete voting rights, and a permanent seat on the High Council. Day nodded, as if he had expected exactly this offer. And reparations for the economic losses our corporations suffered when council contracts were canceled, and a formal public apology acknowledging the council's error. Yes, Counselor Nex said immediately. Both of those. And increased resource allocations. Better trading terms, priority access to council technologies. Whatever you need. That's generous, Day said. He stood and walked to the window, looking down at Earth below. The planet turned slowly, blue and white and beautiful. The world that had tried to kill humanity for millions of years and had instead forged them into something stronger. But I'm afraid humanity needs to discuss our counteroffer first. The delegation exchanged glances. They had expected negotiation, but the word counteroffer suggested humanity had its own requirements. Counselor Nex's form flickered slightly. Of course. What are your terms? Day returned to the table and activated a holographic display. A document appeared, floating in the air where everyone could read it. First, humanity returns as equal partners, not subordinates. We will not accept another probationary period or any status less than full membership. Agreed, Counselor Nex said immediately. That was already part of our offer. Second, Day continued, the Council must commit to a comprehensive training program. All species will receive instruction in human-style crisis response, adaptive problem-solving, and creative thinking under pressure. This training will be mandatory for all emergency services, military personnel, and diplomatic staff. The Grill Counselor clicked in surprise. You want to teach us to think like humans? We want to teach you to think for yourselves, Day corrected. You've become dependent on us. That's not healthy for either of us. If we return, it must be as partners who contribute to a stronger whole, not as caretakers who do everything for you. The delegation was quiet for a moment. Then Counselor Nex spoke carefully. This will take time, perhaps generations. Yes, Day agreed, and will help you. But this is non-negotiable. The Council must commit to becoming self-sufficient. What else? The Morith Counselor asked. Third, human proprietary technology remains under human control. We will license it to the Council under fair terms, but we will not surrender our technological advantages. The quantum relay network, the tactical doctrine systems, the medical prediction algorithms, all of these remain human intellectual property, but you'll maintain them? A Vex administrator asked hopefully. We'll teach you to maintain them, Day said. We'll provide training and support. But ultimately, you need to be able to keep your own systems running. He highlighted the next section of the document. Fourth, humans will command any joint military operations. We've seen the data from the last 6 months. Our tactical doctrine works because we developed it based on our own experiences and psychology. Other species can learn from it, but they can't replicate it. If you want our military support, you accept our command structure. The Krill military commander who had traveled with the delegation actually looked relieved. We've already been trying to implement this. Our officers would welcome human leadership. Fifth, Day said, the Council must adopt humanity's core operational principle. No one gets left behind. This applies to all species, all situations, all circumstances. You don't abandon colonies because they're inconvenient to reach. You don't write off casualties because the rescue is too dangerous. You commit to protecting all Council citizens regardless of the cost. Counselor Nex's form pulsed slowly. That principle costs you ships. It cost you lives. You lost crews on rescue missions that had minimal chance of success. Yes, Day said simply. But we never lost our willingness to try. That's the difference. That's what makes us effective. If the Council wants humanity back, this principle becomes Council policy. He highlighted the final point. And sixth, the most important condition. The Council must acknowledge why you failed. Not just that you failed, but why. You must understand what went wrong, so you can prevent it from happening again. The Moreth counselor seemed confused. We already know what went wrong. We lost humanity's services. We lost your expertise, Day said firmly. You lost your willingness to face challenges yourselves. For 200 years, whenever something was difficult or dangerous or required sacrifice, you called humans. We became your solution to every problem. You stopped developing your own crisis response capabilities because you didn't need to. You became comfortable. You became dependent. That's what destroyed you. He leaned forward, his voice intense but not angry. If you want us back, you must promise to change that. We will help you. We will train you. We will support you. But we will not do everything for you. You need to become the species who don't need us. Do you understand? The chamber was silent. The delegation members looked at each other, and Day could see the realization spreading through them. Humanity wasn't just demanding better terms or more respect. They were demanding that the Council fundamentally change how it operated. Finally, Counselor Nex spoke. You're asking us to become stronger, asking you to become independent, Day said. Right now, you need us desperately. In 50 years, I want you to be able to survive without us. That's the only way this partnership works long-term. The Morith counselor made a sound that the translator rendered as thoughtful consideration. This will be difficult. Some species will resist. Some will argue that we should simply accept your services and be grateful. Then they'll be wrong, Day said. A relationship built on dependence isn't partnership. It's exploitation, even if the exploitation is well-intentioned. Humanity doesn't want to be your caretakers. We want to be your equals. The Krill commander spoke up. How long do we have to decide? Take whatever time you need, Day said. Humanity isn't going anywhere. We're building our own civilization in Solar Alliance space. If the Council wants us back, you accept our terms. If not, we wish you well and hope you find your own path to stability. Counselor Nex stood, his crystalline form brightening slightly. We will take this to the full Council for a vote. But speaking personally, I believe these terms are not only acceptable, but necessary. You're offering us a chance to become better, not just to restore what we lost. That's exactly what we're offering, Day agreed. He stood and bowed slightly, the gesture of respect he had always used. One more thing? When you vote, remember why you need us. Not because we're stronger or smarter or better than you, but because we learned things on Earth that your species never needed to learn. We survived by refusing to give up. You can learn that too. You just have to be willing to try. The delegation departed 3 hours later, carrying humanity's counteroffer back to the Council. The vote took 2 weeks. When it came, it was unanimous once again. Every species accepted humanity's terms, including the requirement to become self-sufficient. 3 weeks after the vote, Captain Hannah's ship Endurance led a small human fleet back into Council space. This time, half the Council's leadership waited to meet them personally. There was no grand ceremony, no elaborate speeches. Counselor Nex simply transmitted a message that appeared on every human ship's communication screen. Welcome home. We have much to learn. Hannah smiled as her crew began coordinating with Council vessels. Engineer Jin appeared on the bridge, already reviewing the status reports from the quantum relay network. He shook his head, making a sound somewhere between amusement and dismay. The relays are in worse shape than I predicted, Captain. It's going to take months to repair them properly, Good Hana said. Plenty of time to teach the Vex engineers how to fix them themselves. Get started on the training protocols.